In this video, we're going to talk about CALLTOOLS and how to optimize your software in order to get the best results from your cold calling outreach. As some of you may know, I've been in the real estate game for almost 4 years at this point, and I've been using CALLTOOLS for over a year and I've had great success with it. So today, I'll give you the top 5 tips that I use personally for my software in order to get the most amount of deals. Tip number 1, day-to-day operations. On day-to-day operations, I make sure that my campaigns are being ran the way that I would like them to be ran and everything going smoothly. This next section is actually specific for CALLTOOLS. When you're VAs, they can only be calling one campaign at a time. You can designate multiple campaigns to an assistant or your cold caller, but they can only be calling one at a time. Therefore, I make sure that the campaign that they're calling is the one I'm working on the most and the one that I want the most leads from right now. And I make sure that the channels are set up correctly for that particular campaign. The channels is a CALLTOOLS way of saying how many phone calls are the VAs doing at the same exact time. In the tip number 2, I'm going to talk about how I use reports in order to determine how many channels per campaign I should be using. However, I do want to talk about the channels a little bit better in order to explain to you how it works. So let's just give an example that it's 8 channels that you're calling at the same time. So what does that mean? That means that your VA is calling 8 numbers at the same time. It could be some of them from the same lead, different lead or whatnot. It could be 8 phone numbers that they're calling at the same exact time. And the person that answers first is the one that gets connected to your cold caller. And the other people are just, you hung up on them and then you just follow up with them later. But let's say 2 people answer at the same time. You answer the one that answered a little bit earlier, and then the second person is put on hold, which most of the time will mean that they will obviously hang up, because if you get in a phone call, why am I on hold? It's weird, right? So a lot of times people are not gonna wait for your VA to come through. The other side of the coin is that if you don't have a lot of channels, then for example, if you have only 2 channels, your VA might be sitting there and waiting for like 4 or 5 minutes to connect to a lead. And this actually depends on the type of list you're running, type of leads you have there, what type of properties you call, what is the motivation of the sellers, all that kind of stuff. So it's very specific to the list and to the campaign you're running. Therefore, reports come into place here very handy. The way that overall logic works is that the least competitive campaigns will have more connections. Let's say you're calling a specific targeted area that there's not a lot of investors, but maybe a particular investor, or you're trying to invest yourself, or whatever it is. You have specific area that is not saturated by wholesalers and investors. That area is going to get a lot of connections. Therefore, you don't want to be calling 8 lines at the same time. In that situation, you want to lower that to 2 or 3. If it is a very competitive area, it's so hard to get a hold of someone, you're calling 10 people and only 1 person answers, I like to be in that 7 to 8 area. That's the balance that you have to find. I have campaigns that are 5, 6, 7, 8, some at 3. So it really depends on the campaign you're running, and you're going to utilize reports in order to determine how many channels or how many phone numbers your VA should be calling at the same time. But before we go to the next section, I did want to mention that I partnered with CALLTOOLS, and in this video, in the top pinned comment, there is a link, and if you use that link, your sign-up fee for CALLTOOLS goes from $500 to only $50. So you get a $450 discount. CALLTOOLS was happy to provide that to you guys, and I'm very happy that I'm able to do that, because this is the software I've been using for a long time. So being partnered up with them is a very cool deal for me. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and like I said, use the link in the pinned comment. So now, how to utilize the report in order to maximize your results. CALLTOOLS has an amazing function. They provide over 20 different reports, and these reports could be used in order to optimize your cold calling marketing. You can utilize these reports in order to understand how your agents are doing, how your campaigns are doing, how your phone numbers are doing. All those things can be taken from the reports. So therefore, I think they're very useful, and I feel like some people don't use them. So I definitely suggest checking those out. The one that I utilize the most is called Campaign Code Disposition Statistics. And what that helps me understand is how many human connections and how many robot or like voicemail or do not answer connections that we have had during a certain campaign. What this helps me understand goes back to the tip number 1. If we have a lot of human connection, but there is no interest, then it means that it's not a saturated list. We just contacting non-interested people, so I have to readjust my list. But if we're not connecting to anyone and there's barely human connections, there could be two issues. Either my skip tracing service is bad, or it's probably because this list is saturated. For me personally, I utilize the same skip tracing service for all of my lists, so that's not a question for me. However, the other part, making sure that the campaign is a good campaign, that is sometimes an iffy situation, so I do make sure to use the report to determine if it's a good campaign or not. Tip number 3, sales funnels. This is simple, but also time consuming. It's a long process to set up sales funnels, but if you do this correctly, you only have to do this once and you never have to do it again. As you can see on your screen right now, these are the sales funnels that I have set up, and I make sure that we contact all of our leads multiple times until we fully give up on them, unless they specify that it's a wrong number, or if they specify do not call, they specifically say do not call me again. I don't like to call those people again because you can technically get in trouble. So if those words come out of the seller's mouth, we're not calling them again. So do not calls and wrong numbers. The rest of the people, if they say they're not interested, if they just hung up on you, or if they send you to voicemail, they get cycled back into the system and we contact them again. Actually, we contact them up until 250 times. Obviously not the same time, but over the span of the campaign. So I set up my sales funnel once and I never had to worry about it again. Tip number 4, make sure your VA system is set up correctly. Your system as a manager and your VA system is actually two different platforms. I guess it's the same platform, CALLTOOLS. However, you guys have different access to the system. They see their own CALLTOOLS, and here's the screenshot. I asked my VA to take a screenshot of what she sees. There are some settings that you want to set up on your end in order for your VA to succeed the best. You want to make sure your VA is on local presence, which means that if you have a phone number in your system that it matches the phone number of the seller you're trying to call, the two phone numbers will be connected together. So if you have an 863 area code and you have an 863 area code on the seller side, that is the phone number you're going to be calling from to connect to this person. It is a super useful feature, right? So honestly, that's why we have 5 numbers from each area code that we're calling, and that gives us a better conversion rate than if you were calling from Florida, you were calling Chicago or in New York. They're going to be like, what is this Florida number doing here? Like, I'm not even going to answer. Even that sometimes goes by like counties. You know, people are weary about like, I don't know anyone from there, why would I answer them? And 2 other things that I make sure to do is I make sure to allow leaderboards. If you have multiple VAs, it's actually really useful to have leaderboards because you can have like a healthy competition. We do some prizes sometimes for our VAs, so that's really cool. And then another thing that we like to talk about is you make sure that you allow mobile phone numbers and you allow federal do not call. Okay, so that's a very weary topic. I'm not telling you what to do. Consult with your attorney if you would like. But what we do is that I know that we're not selling a service, right? We are the ones purchasing the property a lot of times, or we're wholesaling it, but we're positioning ourselves as buyers. Therefore, we're not calling the seller and offering a service. Therefore, federal do not call compliance, marketing compliance, it doesn't particularly apply to us. Therefore, I don't really worry about that too much. However, like I said, if a person says, do not call me again, I do make sure not to call them again, right? They're off my list. I do honor that part of do not call. So that kind of like a balance that you need to have. And tip number 5, you didn't know, but CALLTOOLS can actually integrate with Podio. And this is really cool because there's not a direct integration of CALLTOOLS with Podio, which I was very surprised when I first got the system, and that kind of steered me away for a second. I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to use the system because Podio has been my CRM since I started wholesaling. Everything is there, all my deals are there. I want to make sure that it integrates with it. So what CALLTOOLS does, by using Zapier, they actually allow you to integrate with any CRM, including Podio. They can either do it for you, which is really helpful, or they will provide you a list of how to do it yourself because you got to log in into Zapier, do stuff there, do stuff in CALLTOOLS. But eventually when it's done, you never have to do it again. And what happens is when my VA connects with someone who is interested and she puts in the information, whatever questions we asked about that particular type of property, then she clicks interested. The moment she clicks interested, that particular lead is already in Podio, so the only thing she may have to do is go to Podio and tag me and move on with her life. The data entry part of the business is time consuming, so you want to eliminate that as much as possible. I do that with my texting, with my cold calling, all of that. Integrations, really important. They're gonna save you time. Your VA can be cold calling more and getting more deals instead of doing the data entry job. So these were my top 5 tips to take your Cold Tools use to the next level and for you to be able to get the most out of this great platform. Again, if you do want to check out Cold Tools, the link is in the pinned comment down below. Please make sure to use it. If you are going to use it anyway, you can save $450 on the sign up, which is really cool because I had to pay the $500 when I first signed up. So I wish I could take advantage of that deal. Thank you for tuning into this video. And as always,